Shalom. I've come to notice a certain pattern when it comes to Black Lives Matter. When it comes to the kind of cases that they actually take up, that they actually protest for. It seems like they have selective vision when it comes to the plight of Yisra'elite men and women being shot and killed by law enforcement in this country. It just seems to me that they pick and choose who they will make their slogans behind. It seems like they pick and choose certain cases where it's very easy to argue both points. They don't appear to choose any cases where it seems to be very clear cut, very questionable on the part of the police. A couple of cases come to mind, and I found it funny that I don't recall hearing at any time Black Lives Matter reporting about these incidents or protesting about these incidents. If there was a protest about these incidents, it was more of a local thing by the people directly involved in that particular city. It wasn't a cause taken up by Black Lives Matter to make the protest a national thing. The first case I'm referring to is the death of Jemel Roberson, who was a security guard that disarmed an active shooter and was holding the active shooter at gunpoint for police to come. And when police came, they were securing the scene. But then one particular cop came later. And this particular cop approached Jemel with an AR-15 and shot him several times, killing him. Now, this particular case didn't receive the wide-scale nationwide condemnation by groups like Black Lives Matter. And the only thing I can really think about why it wouldn't receive their condemnation, because it is clearly a situation where a white cop, sees an imposing black man, despite this black man being dressed in security guard attire, complete with bulletproof vest, just like his partner was wearing. But for some reason, this did not get the traction from Black Lives Matter. It did not get the support. It did not get the nationwide movement for protests. And my theory on that, as to why that's the case, is because in this situation, we have a black man that was armed. See, it should not be any surprise to anyone that there has been a concerted effort in this country since its very creation, even before, to keep us a defenseless people. This effort has gone through many, many incarnations. From Jim Crow to various other the very first gun control bills and laws enacted in this country targeting us specifically. Drastic changes to existing gun control laws being made, primarily because of us. There's been an ongoing, ever-shifting, but ever-present effort to see us be a defenseless people on this soil. And this is the reason why I truly believe we will never see BLM, Black Lives Matter, come to the aid and defense of any Israelite men or women, aka black men, black women, who are shot unjustly, maimed, or killed by law enforcement, who they themselves were armed at that time. We won't see that. Oh, they'll come. They'll come to the aid of black men and women who were shot and killed, who were not armed. Oh, they'll also come to the aid of black men and women who were shot and killed or somehow died in police custody, who also had long criminal histories. But for those of us who do not have a criminal history, for those of us who, if we got into a situation like that, it would truly be a night and day, black and white, clear-cut situation of police brutality or unjustified police shooting. It seems like Black Lives Matter will overlook these issues. And my theory for why they do that is because in those type of issues, there can be no argument. In those kind of issues where there is no debate possible, they simply overlook it. There's no way to divide the lines, if you will. There's no way to have one side that supports the cop and the other side who supports the black person that was killed or hurt by the cop. See, when it's clear cut, there's no way to make it a controversy. There's no way to make it a debatable issue in which emotions can be manipulated and tempers can flare. So that's why we never saw stories about Jemel Roberson being his cause, his death being taken up by Black Lives Matter, because it's just too clear cut, and also because he was an armed black man, and they don't like that. They simply don't like that. This whole thing is not about making us a better people. It's all about keeping us dependent on one system or another. And one of the keys to dependency is your inability to defend yourself. Another story that Black Lives Matter never took up was the death of E.J. Fitzgerald Bradford Jr., who was shot 3 times in the back by police officers in a shopping mall in Alabama After a shooting broke out, Fitzgerald is seen on video running in the direction of the shooter. Cops are approaching directly behind him. Fitzgerald doesn't see these cops, obviously, but they see him running in the direction towards where the shooter ran off, and they proceed to assume that Fitzgerald shot the individual who the shooter shot. They say they saw Fitzgerald running towards the injured person that was shot by the shooter. And so they saw him with a gun in his hand. So they assumed that he was the one that shot the shooter, that shot the injured person. This is another story that BLM ignored. Now, some people may ask, well, why was he running towards the shooter? Well, one possible reason for that is that Fitzgerald was in the Army. And one of the things that they teach people in the Army is to run towards the gunfire. Fitzgerald was also a legal owner of a firearm. He was licensed to carry. So logic dictates the conclusion you can come to is that, well, I guess his Army military training kicked in and he started running towards the shooter to stop the threat. Unfortunately, he had no idea that there were cops approaching directly behind him, guns drawn, trained on the back of his body. Again, silence from Black Lives Matter on this particular shooting. Again, here we have, one would think, if Black Lives Matter was truly about bringing out the injustices in regards to police shootings of black people, that this would be something that they would mention. But no, just like Jemel's story, you don't hear anything like this from Black Lives Matter. And again, this is a situation where a black man who is legally able to carry a gun is shot by cops. A black man who quite possibly could have been trying to do everything right, who quite possibly was attempting to save lives. In the case of Jemel, he had saved lives. He had literally prevented an active shooter scenario by apprehending the shooting suspect with his bare hands. And once he had the guy on the ground, that's when he pulled his gun out and held him at gunpoint. So basically, Jemel stopped the threat in a better fashion than most police would have stopped it. Chances are the police would have started shooting at the gunman, maybe hitting him a few times, but most likely hitting everybody in the general vicinity as well. Silence from Black Lives Matter on Jemel's death. Silence from Black Lives Matter on Fitzgerald Bradford Jr.'s death. A lot of times you can tell what something and what someone is all about. simply by what they leave out. It's not so much about what they say. It's about what they don't say, what they don't talk about. As we know, BLM talks about all kind of stuff. All kind of stuff. Many of it, much of it has nothing to do with black people specifically. Yet still, according to the media, these people, BLM, Black Lives Matter, is the central advocacy group for Israelites in America. This is the story, this is the narrative that we're given by the media. Yet still, these two cases, these two names, we don't hear them in the list of names. When the discussion by BLM over unjustified police shootings of black men is being had, we don't hear these individuals' names. Men who were quite literally trying to do the right thing. Instead, we hear the names of people who one would be hard pressed to say they ever did the right thing in their life. We hear the names of convicted criminals that just so happened to do something stupid that got them shot. We hear the names of people who get into fights with police officers, take their weapons, run off, turn around and attempt to shoot them with that weapon. And only then do they get shot by the cops. We hear the names of people who, again, get into fights with police officers, walk away from them, are tased by them to no effect, open their car door, lean into the car, attempting to retrieve something, and only then are they shot. But here we have black men who either stopped the bad guys or attempted to stop the bad guy and were shot. See the difference? Why is it that BLM sees that first group of people being more worthy to fight for the cause of than the second group? I already gave my theory on why that is. But that's just my theory. My conspiracy theory. Shalom.